The settlement at Lodge was only ever a handful of dwellings, and though little remains today, we know a surprising amount about how people lived here. To the north of the footpath we see the remains of Middle Farm, or Middleshare, originally a longhouse with human and animal quarters under one roof. In 1871 we know that the Allen family lived here. There were stables at the east end, where you can see the remains of the cobble and flagstone floor, and a cart shed to the west. The two middle rooms were domestic. The kitchen still has the remains of flagstones edging the floor, along with an abandoned cooking range and salt box. Salt was important for flavour and preserving. Though life was hard, farmers like the Allens would have been relatively self-sufficient. They raised sheep for both meat and wool, using the fat to make tallow candles. There would have been milk, butter and cheese from the cows, and fish from the river. They would have kept chickens and pigs, and they would have grown their own vegetables, preserving them in a communal vegetable store that still stands today near Trowsbeck. The ruins inside the gate by the track on the reservoir side aren't the remains of a farm building, but a Methodist chapel. That might seem unusual in such a small hamlet, but there were many small chapels throughout Nidderdale. Methodism swept across the Dale in the late 18th century. John Wesley himself visited 8 times. Converts would meet in houses or barns for Sunday services and would receive instruction at weeknight classes led by locals, often farmers. The minister himself would travel around a circuit of chapels, visiting several times a year. Originally, the Lodge villagers had to walk to the nearest service at Hayden Car, but in 1858 the chapel was built here by Moses Rayner as an extension to the existing cart shed. The cost to build was £77 and 8 shillings, and the money was loaned by John Verity. In order to pay him back and run the chapel, rent was charged on the pews taken on by members of the congregation. It took 24 years to repay the loan. The museum at Paley Bridge still holds one of the surviving original pews from the chapel. On the valley side of the track, you can see several sets of ruins. The ruins running at an angle to the trackway are from the farmhouse called New Lodge. You'll see the name carved on stone in front of the house. This was rebuilt in the mid-19th century and probably stands on the site of a much older dwelling. The women of the house would have been involved with milking, making butter and cheese, and growing vegetables, while the men and older children took care of the livestock. On this exposed hillside, farming was hard work, and many animals died due to disease or bad winters. Dominated by the cycle of seasons, the same activities would have gone on at the same time year after year. For generations, sheep would have been regularly herded onto the hills to graze and gathered back for shearing. A clean fleece meant a better price at market, so the sheep needed to be washed. Farmers would dam up a stream with stones to make a pool deep enough to drive the sheep through. By Victorian times, sheep washing had become a festive event, with locals turning out in their Sunday best to watch. We can get a flavour of the day-to-day work involved at Lodge from the 1876 auction of High House, the farmhouse furthest from the track. This consisted of a 3-bedroomed farmhouse and dairy, along with stables, hay barns, granary, cow houses and pasture land. After Lodge was abandoned in the 1920s, the buildings gradually decayed and much of the stone was acquired and used elsewhere. Today, the details of everyday life at Lodge are beginning to pass from living memory. So why not take the opportunity to look at the remaining ruins and reflect upon a village that lasted for 700 years and is no more.